and also a Forbes contributor, and I'm here with my fellow fight guy and Forbes contributor, Peter Kahn. What is happening today, Peter?
Man, I miss you.
You do? Just that quick, huh?
Well, listen, we had a great week in LA last week. We spent a lot of time together. We had some good laughs. We actually did a show, but it just seems like it wasn't enough time.
Yeah. It was good. It was crazy because we met somebody. We met each other first time we've ever actually met in person, and we were able to do been knowing each other for 3 to 4 years or however long it's been, talking every day, communicating back and forth about the fight guys and just everything going on in boxing. And finally get an opportunity to meet each other, had a good time, got some good content up. You guys have already seen the Tyson Fury interview and Bob Arum, and so you can take a look at more of that. But today we have a special guest on the Fight Guys, which this is the first time since the Fight Guys went to video that we've actually had a special guest on. And he's a very special guest to me because I got an opportunity to meet him a while back. He probably doesn't remember because it was insignificant to him, but important to me. It is Showtime analyst and Hall of Famer Steve Farhood. I'm going to bring Steve in right now. How you doing, Mr. Farhood? This is Brian Mazique and Peter Kahn here of the Fight Guys. We have you live on now. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great not only to talk to you, but to actually see you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I understand. Some people don't want to see me though. So, I appreciate that. So it's great to get an opportunity to talk to you. We may have some people who want to ask you some questions. Of course, it's about boxing. I know, sometimes you might get tired of talking about that, but
that's okay. It pays the bills.
Who are you telling? I understand. So there's a show coming up, Showtime, in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and it is a pretty interesting matchup. Can you talk to us a little bit about that main event and maybe the card that's coming up?
Well, the main event is really interesting because you have this fighter from Russia, Wladim Siskin. He's 8-0, and it wasn't that long ago when I started in boxing. If you were 8-0, you were a 4-round fighter,
right?
And maybe if you were 18-0, you were a 6-round fighter. Well, times have changed, obviously. And this Siskin is being moved very rapidly, over 300 amateur fights. We've heard this story before. And he's in with a fighter named DeAndre Ware, who will be on Showbox for the 3rd time. And DeAndre is a full-time firefighter from Ohio. And I think it's going to be a really interesting fight because Siskin never fought in America before. We don't know what he's got. But he is coming off a win over a guy who fought for a world title. So he looks like he's the goods. And, Showbox is a proving ground for fighters like this. So we'll see what he's got.
Right. Exactly. I mean, this is where fighters come to step up and to get to that next level. So for Siskin, I mean, he has an opponent that's basically kind of a gatekeeper for him and to see what he's going to be able to bring moving forward. And, look, we've seen a lot of things, Steve, in boxing recently where, people are starting to ease up a little bit on guys getting losses, not writing somebody off the minute that they get their first loss or second loss. Because back in the day, you can have losses and you can still move forward and fight for a world title. And I like the idea that guys that are 8-0 that have had an extensive amateur career are stepping it up fast instead of, no disrespect, but, instead of fighting tomato cans for the first 15, 16 fights.
Well, I think a lot of these Russians and fighters from the former Soviet Union, there's a reason they're moved so quickly. Well, first of all, they all have huge amateur backgrounds. Secondly, we all know that the culmination of a great amateur career is the Olympics. Now, until the fall of the Soviet Union, you only had one Russian fighter in the Olympics. So if there was a great fighter from Ukraine or from Uzbekistan or from Kazakhstan, well, they didn't get to fight in the Olympics because it was all one country. Now, 17 countries from the former Soviet Union, and you have tremendous amateurs from Uzbekistan, from Kazakhstan. We saw it with Lomachenko and many others. They were all Olympic-hardened fighters. They come over here, a lot of them, and what I've noticed about them and talking to their trainers, they're all mature. They're not, even if they're young, even if they're 22, 23, they're very mature. They all very often have families already, and they also have that hunger. So when you combine the amateur background, the hunger to be great, and the maturity, well, it doesn't take as many fights to become a contender.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed, people say all the time, they say, well, this sport is a copycat sport and this sport's a copycat sport. I think all sports are that way. And when you see somebody come along with an extensive amateur career who gets fast tracked, it seems that you get people to come behind them and mimic that. So Ragon Diao, Vasil Lomachenko, and it looks as if Shishkin may be the latest guy in that line. Would you say that's accurate?
Wait a second. Would you say Ruiz Ramirez was brought along too fast?
Well, I didn't say too fast. I said rapidly.
I'm joking.
Well, and there's another reason. There's another factor, I think, that comes into play in the last few years, which is that fighters don't fight as often as they used to.
Right.
Now, this Shishkin is a 10-round fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You're a 10-round fighter. In the old days, you might fight every 3 weeks, every month, every 2 months even. Today, if a 10-round fighter fights 3 times in a year, he's considered busy.
Yeah.
I think that makes you fight a better quality of opponent at an earlier age than you might have only a few years ago.
But how do you, Steve, you've been around this sport for a very long time. For people that know who you are a Hall of Famer, you're a historian, you're a walking encyclopedia. I mean, you're an expert. I don't think I really know anybody that knows more about the sport historically that's living than you do. And with that being said, how do you feel about comparing guys that fought, 50, 60 years ago that fought more often versus the guys that fight 2 and 3 times a year now? I mean, from a safety perspective.
Well, Pete, from a safety perspective, Peter, there's no doubt it's safer. The less you fight, the less you get hit. The less you get hit in the head, the better off you're going to be. There's no argument there. But you bring up a great question, because my take on this is not necessarily a popular one, but I'll throw it at you anyway, for whatever reason. No one gets better at doing anything by doing it less. And the fact that fighters today fight so much less than they used to, I don't think it's a good thing. As a matter of fact, I go as far as to say boxing might be the only sport where you can make an argument that the athletes 40, 50 years ago were as good, if not better, than they are today. Now, part of the reason for that is because a 147-pound fighter 50 years ago was a welterweight, and a welterweight today is 147 pounds. You can't draw parallels with other sports, because you look at a Magic Johnson, a 6'9" point guard. Well, there were no 6'9" point guards years ago. So it's a little different in other sports. Football players are obviously much bigger and faster. But in boxing, with the exception of the heavyweight division, a welterweight is a welterweight. A lightweight is a lightweight. And I just feel that fighting less often, yes, it's better for health reasons, but I don't think in terms of improving your craft, it's necessarily better for you to fight twice a year.
So it seems almost like there's a little bit of a catch-22, a little conundrum there, right? Because obviously the fewer times you fight, you're more than likely able to extend your career, do more from a branding standpoint, and then maybe even make more money. But as you're mentioning, and I totally understand where you're coming from, the actual quality of the craft, the level of the craft that you're performing at, you're sacrificing that with inactivity.
You are. And to balance what I said, you can make the argument that nutrition has made huge strides since fighters used to eat steak the morning of the fight, that no one does that today. Conditioning is far superior than it used to be. Fighters used to run in army boots. I mean, that's not very good for your knees. Anybody would know that. So there are aspects of boxing that have improved dramatically. And I think that the health factor, the medical parts of consideration are much better than they used to be as well. The first fatality I saw was in New York in 1979. They literally hailed an ambulance off the street to take the fighter to the hospital. Obviously, we don't have those kind of ridiculous situations anymore. So in a lot of ways, boxing has improved medically and for the safety of the fighters, but I don't think necessarily that boxing has improved for the quality of the boxing.
Right. But Steve, to your point, and, we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention it, back in the day, hailing an ambulance from the street, and just this past month, we had 2 fatalities that were caused, because of boxing. So, what do you think it is that in this day and age, we can still have these issues that probably seem to be something that is prevented, that can be prevented?
Well, I don't know that it can be prevented, as long as the point of the sport is to hit the other guy in the head, and the easiest way to win is by knockout.
Right.
You're going to have problems.
What I'm saying is, with these particular cases,
right.
do you think dehydration and the method of cutting weight And, that whole process, I mean, I know you're not a doctor. I know that no one can say for sure, but, when you see cases like this, it's not like someone's getting hit in the head and dropping dead. These are cases where it is, a swelling of the brain. It takes place. It finally manifests, after the fight, fairly quickly. But these guys then go into, a coma, and then that's it. I mean, they're, the brain stem pushes out no oxygen, and they're brain dead.
Well, your point is a good one, which is, a lot of people bitch about mismatches. Mismatches are bad for boxing. You almost never get anyone badly hurt from a mismatch, because in a mismatch, the lesser fighter gets stopped quickly, doesn't take a lot of punishment. The fighters who suffer brain damage are the ones who are too brave for their own good, absorb a lot of punishment like Dadashev did. And that's the problem. Now, the dehydration factor, we know fighters will do anything, and for that matter, wrestlers and MMA fighters will do anything to make weight. And
that affects brain health.
Of course, but there's an argument to be had for making weigh-ins the day of the fight, the way they used to be years ago, and there's an argument to be made against that, because if you have the weigh-in the day before the fight, then you do have time to rehydrate, and the number one cause for problems with all organs is dehydration. So especially the brain. So
remember, when you get to,
I don't think that necessarily moving the weigh-in up to the day of the fight is a good thing.
Right. Well, dehydration happens quickly, right? But rehydration takes time.
It's a while.
You do not rehydrate at the same rate that you can dehydrate, and that's part of the problem.
But I would think you can rehydrate over 36 hours better than you can over 12 hours.
Yeah. We have a couple comments from our viewers, and actually really good ones. Boxing Comment says that if boxers from the golden age made the kind of money that fighters are making today, he argues that they'd fight 2 to 3 times a year as well. So he's making a point that essentially they fought as frequently as they did out of necessity, not because they were as interested in honing their craft.
Well, that's a very good point. And also, in the old days, fighters fought under different economic situations. What you made was usually generally determined by the live gate. You got a percentage of the live gate. Today, of course, it's guaranteed money. But not, again, a common misconception, I think, for people who aren't hardcore fans, they see heavyweights making $5 million a fight.
Absolutely.
Floyd making what he made.
Absolutely.
Small percentage of fighters.
Absolutely.
There's not much of a middle class in boxing, because it's very hard to make middle class money unless you fight several times, and no one's fighting several times. So yeah, the big guys make the big money, but there aren't that many of them. It's not that high a percentage of the entire field.
But I think that there is, to a degree, some validity to that point, because if you look at somebody like proportionately, right? If you were to say the Henry Armstrong of today, right? Henry Armstrong, in 1944, fought like it. I mean, it's well in the double-digit times, right?
Sure.
Now, he was at the end of his career when he did that. Now, there's plenty of fighters today who, if they were of Henry Armstrong's ilk competing today, there's no way in the world they'd have to fight that many times if they had the reputation that Homicide Hank had at that time. So even though I understand what you're saying, and I totally agree that so many people think they like, oh, well, there's more money in boxing, but that's because they're looking at Floyd's purse. They're looking at Manny's purse, and they're not looking at the guy who's on the undercard. And there's more of those guys, and far more of those guys than there are guys at the top. But even at the top, I think there's a difference.
Well, Henry Armstrong once defended the welterweight title 11 times in 1 year.
Yeah.
Now, he wasn't fighting murderer's row of opponents. We know that. A lot of the fighters even had losing records. But, television money changed a lot of things. It's just that fighters today don't make as much money as people think they do. And, in the old days, they fought often because they didn't make as much. But you think of, like, during the Depression, Benny Leonard and fighters like that were making, $5,000 a fight, $3,000 a fight. That was unbelievable money. So, the old days, even though they fought often, they made pretty good money versus what the average person was making.
Right. And I can attest to this. I mean, obviously, you guys know I currently have 10 active fighters with all the major promoters, and today's driven more by the marketplace. The fighters have minimums in their in their contracts. But the good managers and the fighters understand the market value. They understand not a lot of guys are actually fighting for their minimums. Some guys are, but a lot of guys are fighting over the minimums, and it's really based on the landscape of the particular show and the opponent. So it's a little bit of a negotiation, but there's a huge disparity between guys that are still fighting 10-round off television undercard fights for anywhere from 12 to 15 to 20 to $30,000, and guys that are fighting and challenging for world title fights in the 200,000-300,000s, and guys that are defending them for millions. There's just a big gap, but it jumps pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now, Steve, I have another question. It comes from a commenter as well. He says, do you think that marijuana should be allowed in pro boxing? And I kind of think it's a relevant question because we started to talk a little bit about brain health. And obviously, there's several theories and several proven things to talk about how marijuana is helpful from a neurological standpoint. So like Peter said, obviously, we know you're not a doctor, but based off of the information that you do have, do you think that weed should be allowed in boxing?
Well, wait a second. What information does Steve have?
I mean,
I'm actually stoned out of my mind right now.
Right
Hey,
now.
listen, well, Brian and I, we can talk
show.
about that too. Wait, Brian. Well, we'll get back to that. But we spent last Friday with Mike Tyson and Tyson Fury. We'll get to that after.
Yes.
Speaking about
the dog
stones,
was high.
Literally, the dog was high.
The dog was high.
Sure. I'm sure. I never understood whenever you see like a no contest on a fighter's record. And we always ask why, because all the record says is NC. So that's why. And he says, I tested positive for weed. My question is always, well, isn't weed a depressant? Yes, it is. So how is that helping you? I mean, as a fighter, I don't think it's an advantage to be high.
I wouldn't think anything that's
before you
slows the
fight
motor
or
down.
anything.
Yeah.
So should it be illegal? I don't know if it should be illegal. It's, in certain states,
Right.
obviously legal. In certain states, it's not. But I don't think you're getting any kind of advantage over your opponent if you get high. So
Well, maybe it's not an advantage. Maybe it could be that it's a disadvantage, which puts you at a health risk.
exactly. You look at it that way, that's understood. Right.
Yeah. Or maybe if it's used during what is designated as a recovery period after a fight to help deal with whatever, head trauma you may have had, because there are studies out there about how marijuana is helpful to deal with head trauma and that sort of thing. So,
Right.
I mean, I'm playing weeds advocate here, but
Literally.
I understand, but the recovery question that leads to a bigger subject entirely, which is steroids.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter, I'd like to hear what you have to say because you have so many fighters.
Mm-hmm.
How big a problem do you think it is in boxing? How much of a dark, deep secret is it in boxing? Because I feel that there are probably a lot. The cheaters tend to always be ahead of the checkers. And obviously a lot of fighters have been. And boxing is different than baseball. In baseball, if you're a cheater and you hit the ball. So you hit the ball 20 feet further and you hit 30 homers instead of 15 homers. In boxing, if I'm in shape because of steroids and I was able to train harder and you weren't or didn't, well, then I could literally end your life, in rounds of a tough fight. So I question, and let's see what Peter has to say, but I question, whether it's something that should be dealt with a little more strenuously.
Yeah, I think that, being someone that manages. Literally, I have 10 active fighters right now, and all of them are enrolled in the clean boxing program in order to maintain a ranking with the WBC. All of them are subject to voluntary or what's the word I'm looking for? Random drug testing,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think there's no place for performance enhancing drugs in the sport. It's all about education, because I'm going to tell you that there are so many circumstances where fighters take things that are over the counter. They get it at GNC. They order it online. They hear it's, pharmaceutical grade, but that it's, meets, it doesn't go against any of the guidelines. And, I think
you say meats as in tainted meats?
No,
I'm joking.
I see what you did there. That was good. So, but that's an example too, right? If you know that there's the potential of tainted meat in Mexico and that there could be clenbuterol in there, even the minuscule amount that was in his system, then you'd think he would stay away from it. I'm dealing with something right now. I'm not going to name the fighter who tested positive in an important fight last year, who had, you know, when you hear failed the post-fight drug test, well, that could mean so many things, right?
Yes.
Was he taking a PED? No. Was his testosterone level high, but within the limits of it being okay? Yes. But it still categorized him as a positive test.
Absolutely.
So to answer your question, I think people are always going to try.
Yeah.
Okay? I think people are always going to look for an advantage. Some people don't care because, you know, the money at the top of the sport can be so big that I think some people are willing to take that risk. I think that if there were automatic bans from the sport, no questions asked, one strike rule, I think you'd have guys not willing to take that risk as much. I mean, obviously, I don't condone it, but I think that it's just, you know, like in any sport, right, that we've seen, guys continuously pop positive in the NFL, in Major League Baseball.
Because the money is greater and greater. Yeah.
It's just the risk reward factor. And here's the other thing. I'm going to tell you something. I hear a lot of fighters say this, and I've had a lot of conversation with a lot of former fighters. And, you know, one in particular that is a broadcaster now on ESPN. And he says, look, you know, a lot of guys feel that they do it as a defense mechanism because everybody else is doing it, or they know this person's doing it, or, you know, they almost feel like if they're not doing it, they're putting themselves in danger. So some guys actually feel like they need to do something to have a little extra edge, but that extra edge could be so many different things. You know, what is that really? Is it to help you make weight better? Is it to build lean muscle? Is it for endurance? Is it for strength? You know, it's such a wide variety. I mean, you could take a supplement over the counter that you buy at GNC that has deer antler in it, and that's going to increase your testosterone level, and then you're going to pop positive.
At my age, I need deer antler. So.
Don't we all?
And another factor that a lot of fans don't realize or don't want to realize is that it costs money to drug test. It's not, you know, and not everybody is. Peter, you have some very, very good fighters. Not everybody is WBC rated quality. There are a lot of 6-round fighters and fighters and fighters with losing records. And, you know, to test everybody becomes cost prohibitive.
Right. Well, they might fly under the radar for a certain amount of time, but then they're going to get to the point where there's no choice. And, you know, look, we've heard about a particular fighter, only 8 division world champion, right? One of the greatest of all time, one of my favorites of all time, Manny Pacquiao. People are constantly wanting to believe that Manny somehow was on performance enhancing drugs. I mean, there was even a lawsuit against Floyd Mayweather Sr. Right, about you know how, and that was settled. But the point is that there are people, and he never tested. You know, you can argue with his. I could be wrong here, but I'm off by a couple. 23 or 24 world title fights, he's never tested positive.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, you know, people are always going to talk. Some guys are doing it; they're flying under the radar. They have it figured out, and some guys are going to test positive. I mean, look at these heavyweights. I mean, it's like it felt like an epidemic at a certain point.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Jarrell Miller like popped for aisle 18 in Walgreens, so it was like everything possible there, you know. So
Povetkin,
Dillian
White, you said Miller. Who else we're missing? There, I mean, there's a bunch.
Deontay Wilder had 3 opponents in a row, I think, who tested.
Yeah, 3 in a row. So we have another question, Steve. This is from Ann Jane Douglas, and she says, "Do you think we just mentioned Deontay Wilder? Says, do you think that the Wilder versus Fury happens next year?" So obviously, we did an interview with Tyson Fury, and he flat out gave us the date, February 22nd. So I'm assuming Ann is asking, do you think that date's going to stick or something's going to happen?
Well, I don't know about the date until you hear it from the promoters and the TV or pay-per-view people. You can't be sure of it. I think they'll fight again. Of course, you know, Fury has Otto Wallin to fight. Probably not that tough a test, although we can't be sure because Wallin has been scheduled twice on Showbox and fought a total of 1 round in 2 fights because the second fight against BJ Flores was postponed. Wilder has a tough fight ahead of him. Luis Ortiz is no joke. And Luis Ortiz, a lot of people don't know this, had a bad hand when he fought Wilder the first time. It still stunned him, and, you know, Wilder got saved by the bell. So I think like any heavyweight fight, you can't take anything for granted. You can't take anything for granted less in the heavyweight division than any other division. And Wilder has a very tough fight ahead. So until Wilder fights Ortiz and beats him, I don't think anybody should even be talking about or anticipating a Wilder Fury rematch.
Now, Steve, talking about Showbox, you've been doing Showbox for quite a while. It's, consistently been the proving ground, like I said earlier, for fighters that are on their way up. It almost, I guess, stepped into the shoes that USA Tuesday Night Fights had, right? It filled those shoes when that went off the air, which has now been over 20 years ago, and has consistently provided us tomorrow's champions. What have been some of your favorite moments so far of 2019, and which Showbox stars or standouts do you see really making a name for themselves in 2020?
Well, I think in recent months, the two best prospects we've had on have been Devin Haney, who is already championship quality, and Jaron Ennis, who's actually going to be on Friday's card off TV, but I think we're going to show highlights of his fight, and he'll be back on Showtime at a later date, presumably. But those two fighters just seem to be a cut above. Before that, it was Regis Prograis, no doubt about it. I mean, championship quality, obviously he's a world champion now. So a stat I'm going to use on the show Friday night is that we've done, I don't know, somewhere between 250 and 300 shows, and we've had 80 future world champions on the show. So basically you're getting one future champion on every 3 show boxes, roughly.
It's amazing statistic.
It's pretty amazing. And it's been that way for 19 years. So I think we've filled a void. Tuesday Night Fights, fantastic series, ran for 17 years, but very often they made their biggest ratings points with Hector Camacho, Larry Holmes.
Washed up guys, yeah.
It wasn't always prospects. Showbox, for the most part, with exceptions, Showbox for the most part has always been about prospects and matching them tough. It's a very simple premise, yet nobody else has ever even tried it, I think, partly because we do it so well.
That's a good point, because Gordon Hall is pretty strict about who he allows on Showbox. Promoters just can't put who they want. I mean, the approval process is pretty tough, and some promoters don't want to take certain risks that Gordon holds the promoters to, which is, I guess, what's made it very competitive.
And another thing about Gordon and Showbox is that we've never been hesitant to put a fighter on who's lost. It all obviously depends on how you lose. There are second-round knockout losses, and there are competitive decision losses. And the fighter we have in our main event, DeAndre Ware, has gone one-on-one on Showbox. He lost his first fight to Chem Kilic on Showbox. So he's been brought back. So if you give a good effort, you can be brought back. And we'd like to see that carry over to even bigger platforms on TV, because it's a good thing.
So who do we have on the card? I mean, we talked about the main event, but what does the rest of the card look like for this upcoming Showbox?
Well, the middle fight is a really interesting fight because it's Ergashev, Shohjahon Ergashev from the former Soviet Union, who's undefeated and is a lot of fun to watch, but to be honest, has to show improvement if he's going to break through. And he's fighting a fighter named Abdiel Ramirez from Mexico, who's a come-forward fighter, a free swinger. So that, in terms of action, that should really be a very good fight. And Ergashev is coming off a win against Michael Fox, who was a 6'4" junior welterweight. So, he deserves a little bit of a break this time. He's getting a guy that should suit him better. So Ergashev should look better this time.
Yeah, that is a massive, in terms of length, junior welterweight at 6'4".
Yeah, ridiculous. And Ergashev beat Fox, but didn't look great in doing it, and that was predictable. You knew going.
I mean, that's tough. I mean, that's a tall order.
Yeah. Look what he did. All right, so we got one more question for you, Steve. Is when I'll hold you all day, but I think this one is really compelling because Peter and I have had several conversations about this subject offline. But Boxing Comments asks, was Eddie Hearn wrong in forcing a U.S. citizen in Andy Ruiz to fight in Saudi Arabia?
That is a great question, and a question I've been asked about. Should it be there? Should it not be there? Look, the human rights situation in Saudi Arabia is a disgrace. Okay, that doesn't even need to be explained. I'll give you my personal feeling about this. If you're going to cover boxing, or if you're going to be in boxing, we have to suspend our nature of being judgmental.
Yeah,
there are a lot of creeps in boxing. There are a lot of fighters who are creeps. There are also a lot of fighters who are great guys. There are promoters who are creeps, and I'm using the word creep, or you could fill in whatever word you want.
Hey, listen, you can say anything on this show.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that you can't be too judgmental. Look, this was an issue in South Africa years ago. Bob Foster, an African American, defended the title in South Africa. The crowds there were segregated. You know, eventually, sports very often helps break those kind of barriers. This fight is not going to break any kind of ground in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure of that. But all I can do is tell you how I feel, which is that it's difficult to be too judgmental in boxing. Should the fight be in Saudi Arabia? If I were an American fighter, would I feel funny going there? Probably. Does Andy Ruiz have too many options? Well, he probably signed away, 3/4 of his life to get that first shot at the title. So,
I mean, apparently it's 9 million reasons to go.
Exactly. And you know what? He's probably underpaid because let's face it, Joshua needs Andy Ruiz now pretty badly.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the nature of the business.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like people can talk about Joshua being the A side, and technically from a money standpoint, he is, but it's hard to quantify how important it is to his career moving forward from a monetary standpoint and from a legacy standpoint if he can't get an opportunity to right that wrong with Andy Ruiz. So,
well, a fascinating point, and we could go back and forth on this. It seems to me that 50% of the people in boxing think that Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua are making a mistake taking an immediate rematch, and 50% think it's the only way to go. It's a fascinating viewpoint. There are also 50% of people think McCracken should be changed as trainer, and 50% think no, it wasn't his fault that he lost. So it's a very interesting fight. They've made some interesting choices. Clearly, they're going for the immediate rematch. It's not a financial issue because Anthony Joshua has made millions and millions of dollars. That's not what it's about. It's about reclaiming this guy's career. If he loses, where is he at? I think we know the answer to that.
So, Brian, I want to ask Steve, something specific before we let him go. I'm sure he has better things to do in Broken Arrow than sit and talk to us, or maybe not.
I think I heard his cowboy boots slide across the floor just a second ago.
He's got Raul and Barry waiting for him.
New York and Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
So, Steve, I always like asking you this whenever I see you. Who are your top 5 pound for pound right now?
All right, in no particular order, since you're catching me a little off guard. You got to put in Lomachenko. You got to put in Inoue. You got to put in Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. And now I'm looking for a 5th, maybe Usyk, although he obviously has to prove himself at heavyweight. That's not a bad top 5, I'd say.
No Canelo?
Yeah, throw in Canelo. Let's make it 6.
I mean, any honorable mentions? If you want to go to 10, we can go to 10.
Who am I leaving out?
Where's Deontay?
It's. I think it's hard for heavyweights with exceptions. It's hard for heavyweights to crack the top 10 of any pound for pound list because they have to fight other heavyweights. Where an Errol Spence can fight, he's a bad example. Mikey Garcia can fight multiple weight divisions, and if he keeps winning, well, he's done that much more. Heavyweights can't do that.
Has Jose Ramirez get an honorable mention after the Hooker fight, or is he still remained to be seen?
No, he beat Antonio Orozco, which was a big win at the time. Orozco was undefeated, and the Hooker fight, the way he won it, put him up there as well. I'm not so sure he's better than Regis Prograis at that weight.
Hey, I was thinking the same thing. I'm not sure that Regis doesn't deserve it. So let's make
that fight. But Inoue is the guy that unless you're a ridiculous hardcore fan, you probably don't know. He might be the best fighter in boxing.
He might be. He might be.
Fully prove it because people just don't pay attention to bantamweights as much as they should. But he's fighting Donaire, and if you beat a future Hall of Famer like Nonito Donaire, you're going to get a lot more publicity. So I'm glad Inoue is getting that chance.
So aside from this upcoming fight, is there any other upcoming program or things we can look forward to at Showbox as we move into the fall?
We'll be in Midland, Texas in September. September 20. Leah tells me it's 20th, with more prospects, so we look forward to that. And there's a fighter fighting named Brandon Lee, who's undefeated. He'll actually be on this card, and he will be on the September show in Midland, Texas as well. So those prospects just keep on coming.
Yeah. I mean, it's that's the thing about boxing, man. And I've told Peter this before. Like, I've been hooked, ever since I could remember. And it always replenishes itself. If you really love the sport, it really just keeps replenishing itself. So somebody moves on and you feel like, man, I was really into it when that guy was fighting. and then somebody else comes, and you're like, wow, it's just a different thing. And that's why I like Showbox. That's why I like prospect driven shows like that, because most people who are hardcore fans of something are obsessed with what's next. And that's like the epitome of the show.
Yeah, and one thing I've learned a long time ago on Showbox is never judge a fighter by one fight.
Yeah.
The guy on the other side of the ring largely determines how that fighter is going to do. And we've had multiple fighters multiple times come back on Showbox, 2, 3, 4. I think the all-time record is Adam Lopez was on 7 times. But, fighters like Tim Bradley, Andre Ward, future stars, Ricky Hatton, they fought on Showbox many times. And that's sort of fun for the viewer, not only to see the fighter grow or in some cases not grow, but to see how far he can go. And to from the beginning to say, I saw him at the beginning and I liked him. I didn't like him or surprised me or whatever. It's great for the fans.
Yeah, and it's becoming a trend. I'm telling you, more than ever, fighters and Julian Williams said it best after his world title win over Hearn. I mean, you can lose if you look good and you're competitive and it was entertaining. You can come back, and that's what makes it exciting. I mean, a lot of guys are getting more opportunity to come back instead of being discarded.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, Steve, me personally, I could talk to you about boxing all day. You get to the point where like, I really want that guy to leave me alone. But we're going to go ahead and let you go. We humbly appreciate you joining us. Hopefully you'll come back. And sometimes the amount of makeup that Peter wears can sometimes throw off our guests. But I can relate. Yeah, you had the poker look the whole time, so I really appreciate your tolerance.
Imagine what it would look like in high def on TV without makeup.
Listen, I corner wherever we are. I corner Steve. You could see him looking for exits. His wife's tried to be a distraction at times.
Yes. So thank you so much again for joining us, Steve, and we look forward to speaking to you again.
Brian and Peter, thanks so much for having me on.
Steve, thank you.
Man, I'm telling you. I can talk to Steve Farhood for hours.
We just know so much. I mean, that's why I like talking to him. He knows everything.
It's crazy, man. Like if you're talking to somebody about something that you love,
right, and
you can literally ask them any question and they will have some level. Like I can't imagine asking him a question about boxing and him going, I don't know.
He's a legit historian. I mean, he literally has the title of historian, and he's a Hall of Famer for a reason.
For a reason.
He was editor Ring NKO at some point. He's been writing about boxing since before you and I were born.
Yeah, and then it was funny. We talked to him the first time he was on the podcast when we were just on audio, and he was talking about how when he started, he was writing the reviews for wrestling matches and wrestling events, and it's like they'd have to like make it up because they weren't actually there. So it's fantastic. And that's actually a pretty good segue because and I want to know what the viewers, you guys who are here now, guys that are active in the chat, guys and girls who are active in the chat, I want to know what you guys think about we're the fight guys, and so there's all kinds of fights, right? What do you guys think about wrestling and MMA content? I know some boxing fans do not cross over. If you guys have listened to me, you know I love MMA. You probably don't know how much I love wrestling. I'm a hardcore wrestling fan as well. So, we're really strongly leaning towards adding some of that stuff in. I want to know what you guys think, and just kind of see. We just want to expand viewership, expand our content for sure. So, yeah, we always want to hear what you guys think about that. But Peter, we have a few things to talk about. Obviously, it was great talking to Steve Farhood, and we already talked a little bit about that Showbox card. I did some homework on Wladim Siskin, so I am interested in seeing him against DeAndre Ware for sure. And then there's the Shojahan, I think it is, Shojahan Ergashev against Abdiel Ramirez. That's the other fight that'll probably be televised this weekend. But that's not as cool as Showbox is, that's not the major draw this weekend.
Oh, I know we're going to Russia.
Yeah, we're going to Russia. And we just spent some time with Buddy McGirt, had a chance to talk to him. But it's Sergey Kovalev against Anthony Yard. There is I'm going to tell you.
Wait. Before you tell anybody. So I get a text message
Yeah.
like at I don't know what time it was, but it was like 4 a.m. in Russia, right? From Buddy. What's up, black man? You could just say he's running out of people to message. He's running out of people to text. That would be a week. So he's like,
he said, "What's up, black man?"
I'll send it to you.
I love it. I love it.
He's like, just checking in.
Just checking in, black man. I'm gonna start calling you "What's up, black man" from now on.
I'm gonna send it to you, so I'm not making this up.
Yeah,
we did have fun with him last weekend.
Yeah, we did. I mean, honestly, Buddy is cool to talk to. Like, you know what the funny thing is about Buddy? Buddy is a Hall of Famer. Just like recently, he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, Buddy fought Pernell Whitaker twice, right? And you can make a strong argument. Some people can make an argument that he may have won one of those fights. There's not many people who can make an argument.
Right. They can't even be competitive.
They can't even be competitive, right?
Let alone
Buddy was that dude, right? I remember watching an interview, and I told Buddy about this week. I remember watching an interview with Oba Motor City Car.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And he had just won a fight. It was on, I believe it might have been I think he was still on ESPN or something. But they'd come to him and they were like, so who do you want next? And somebody in the background said, Buddy McGirt. And the look on his face was like, I don't really think I really want my money.
Right. Like who said that?
I told you don't say that, right? It was, and I'm looking like, bro, you really don't. I don't think you really want it, Buddy McGirt. So he
never got him.
Never got him. He was a heck of a fighter. Buddy McGirt was a heck of a fighter, and he's also a heck of a trainer. He helped refurbish Sergey Kovalev for the rematch against Leader Alvarez, and now he's tasked with getting him ready for a young and powerful and athletic Anthony Yarde. Peter.
Yeah.
Now we saw what our friend Mike Coppinger reported about Sergey Kovalev a couple weeks ago.
Right.
It has some people worried about where he is mentally, not to mention, what is he, 36, 37? What do you think? Like, I'm asking you for your flat out prediction for Kovalev Yarde.
My flat out prediction is I think Yarde's going to have to knock Kovalev out to literally win in his hometown. That's what I think, because I just think it's just going to be too much for Yarde to combat that environment. Knowing Buddy, Kovalev is going to be ready to go. He looked good in the rematch, right? He looked good avenging his loss. We heard what Mike Coppinger reported and what allegedly happened. I think a lot of these things happen with a lot of fighters, a lot of athletes, a lot of people, doctors, lawyers, school teachers, and they don't get reported.
Right.
Now, a lot of them aren't fighting, but a lot of them are competing in sports or having to use their mental capacity. Look, I mean, maybe I had a bad night, right? Maybe I had a bad night. I don't know if that's indicative of how an entire training camp is going. I just could go off of what I know about Sergey Kovalev, knowing that he's lost 3 times in his career, very close proximity of each other. The first one, you can argue he didn't lose. The second one, he lost. The third one, he lost, and then he avenged that one. So I think he's still competitive. I think Yarde is definitely a contender, but I don't know if he's beaten the type of person that would allow us to say at this point that he's going to beat Kovalev, especially in his hometown. So I'm picking Kovalev to win a decision, or that's just the logical. I don't even know what the odds are, but
I haven't checked. We can definitely check now.
Right. It's a logical prediction. I think I'm standing by the fact that I think the only way Yarde wins is by stoppage.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's what I think, right? I don't think that Yarde, and I don't know if he ever will be, but I don't think at this point in his career, he is developed enough as a boxer to take advantage of what I think is a diminished Kovalev, for a number of reasons, right? I do think he's a diminished guy. I look at the guy who fought Eliter Alvarez, even in the second fight. That was not the Kovalev that we saw striking fear in everybody at 175 pounds, just about. It's just he's not the same guy for whatever reason.
Right.
You know, I'm judging him even in victory, right? So I'm not putting it on the knockout because he was, to be honest with you, he was dominating Alvarez before he got dropped. He was dominating the fight.
Remember, Kovalev is a classic bully.
Yeah.
And I think psychologically, Andre Ward took something from him.
Yeah.
And made him question himself. And I think that, you know, one of the things that we saw, which was consistent with his 3 losses, was fading later in the fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And there's I'm gonna, first of all, let me compliment the chat.
Okay.
the questions and the comments that are coming across, and I'm watching them as they scroll, are fantastic. Like everybody that's watching right now, even if they have a differing opinion, these people know boxing, what they're saying. But I will beg to differ with one comment, and I agree with what you just said, but it contradicts what's in the comment. Boxing comment says that Kovalev has great stamina, but he says that Yard's muscles will tire him out by the 6th. I beg to differ there. I think that the biggest blemish in Kovalev's game right now is the stamina.
It happens quickly too.
And I mean, like
he goes on.
I
empty,
mean, like
really,
it's like somebody poured a glass
on empty, right?
Yes,
almost like he's struggling to move around the ring.
Absolutely lumbering, very labored movement. His punch activity. If I had the punch stats, I would really bring him up now. But I would love to see his punch stats from rounds 1 through 4 through and compare them from 6 to 8 or 6 to 9. It drops off significantly. And I think that's where Yard does have a chance because he's a big, strong guy and he can crack. And I don't know that Kovalev has a fantastic chin, and you'd have to think it may be even somewhat diminished now at this point in his career. So,
and Brian,
I don't know.
Furthermore, if some of these things that he's alleged of doing, or the the psychological toll of the assault trial that's still pending, if he is doing something that would diminish his physical or mental capacity, that could have an effect.
Yeah, and think about it like
this. I also know many guys that did all that and flourished in the ring.
Yeah, you're right. But think about it like this. Andre Ward is one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. I would put him in the top 20 greatest fighters I've seen, right? Okay. Just all things considered. One of the pound for pound top guys when Kovalev fought him both times. So my point in that is this. That's a guy that Kovalev had to be up for mentally to fight, right?
I think he won the first. I think Kovalev won the first fight.
I had Ward winning, but I don't think that that's a ridiculous take, right? Because it was a close fight. But then for a while, his career was about chasing Adonis Stevenson and wanting that fight. Then it was about Andre Ward. At this point in Kovalev's career, right? What is his career about? Is it about Canelo at some point? So I wonder
it looks that way.
Yeah, it looks that way. But I wonder if he is where he needs to be mentally to beat a guy who is young and hungry. Now, I'm going to take Kovalev by decision, but would I be shocked if he gets knocked out in the first 3 or 4 rounds? I would not. I would not be shocked.
I would be surprised only because I think that those are going to be the rounds in which he's going to be at his best. And I think Yard's going to be a little bit on edge. I think he's going to be a little bit cautious. Anyone that fights Kovalev is going to be a little bit cautious.
Yeah.
Can Kovalev be one punch knocked out? Sure, anyone can.
Yeah.
I wonder what the environment's going to be like. Look, I've been in this experience. I've experienced this. I've experienced recently with Dennis Hogan going to Monterrey to fight Jaime Munguia. I was in the corner.
Yeah.
We didn't have chairs. They didn't give us chairs. We had to kneel and sit on the stairs, the ladder.
Yeah.
we couldn't even use one side of the ring apron because you had Julio Cesar Chavez, Eric Morales, and Marco Antonio Barrera doing the commentary, and they blocked off our access to the other side. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It was a hostile crowd. No one was rooting for us.
Yeah.
You feel it. You
Yeah.
feel that energy.
Yeah.
It's a little bit unnerving.
And it depends on who you are as to what that brings out of you. You know, and
it does.
Yard hasn't been in that situation, so we
Right.
don't know what he's like behind enemy lines like that.
Right.
You know, so and he doesn't know either. He
Well,
won't know until he's there.
You tell me, and let's just really break it down. If you're looking at his record, okay, who do you see on his record that says to you that he's ready to defeat Sergey Kovalev?
There's nobody on his record that makes me say that. If you're looking for
I'm looking for someone that would step up.
No, if you're looking for a reason to believe in Yard, you're not going to find it on his resume. You're going to find it in a perceived weakness of Sergey Kovalev.
That's a good point. So it's really Kovalev's fight to win or lose.
I would agree.
So what does everyone in the chat think?
It's actually kind of split. So we were talking about what the odds are. According to my bookie, the odds are Kovalev is a -175 favorite.
It's a very small favorite.
It's a very small favorite, and Yard is +145.
Plus 145?
Plus 145.
Listen, this is basically like almost even month, almost pick 'em.
Yep.
And Yard's going into his backyard.
So that tells you what odds makers are thinking about Kovalev.
I wonder where did it start? Does it have the opening line by any chance? It should. It
does not specify or have any linkage where you can kind of backtrack and track it.
Right.
But yeah, and it's not considered a significant enough fight for it to have like its own section, like a Mayweather or Pacquiao kind of a fight. So I just kind of have the listing. But it's man, but you asked about the chat. The chat has it kind of split. We have some Jeff Marshall believes that Yard has the youth on his side, and Kovalev doesn't have a motor, and he believes that Kovalev's issues outside of boxing will be a distraction, and that Yard is going to be able to take advantage of it. Boxing Comments, I believe, says that he says everybody, including myself, want to see Kovalev get knocked out again. Kovalev does not.
How do you really feel about him?
Kovalev doesn't have a lot of fans in the United States. Like, and I don't even know if Boxing Comments is even in the United States. But you know,
it's hard. The crusher makes him. The crusher makes it hard to love him.
He sees Yard gassing out by 9.
Interesting.
And you know, because of what Peter was saying, I don't think that's a bad assessment, because that pressure, man, of this is something that I always say, and this is one of the things I would say is most special about Floyd Mayweather. People talk about defense and all this, and yes, he's great at that. Yes, he has great footwork. He's absolutely fantastic in the clinch. The footwork and all that is beautiful, right? But the single greatest trait that I think that he has, and it's so unique, is that he has the ability to excel in a room that everybody hates him. And most people cannot perform under that time. Floyd has made himself a villain. You hardly ever go to or watch any fight and Floyd's fighting and people are chanting his name louder than they're chanting the other guy's name. Generally, it's a pro whoever Floyd is fighting crowd, wherever he's fighting. And he sets it up that way on purpose because it's the most monetizable way for him to do his thing.
Pretty Boy Floyd wasn't working for him.
It wasn't working. And he said that. He flat said it. You know, he flat said it. He's like, I don't want to be Sugar Ray Leonard. I want to be a villain. Villains make all the money.
It was the HBO show where they went to Michigan.
Yeah.
And it fell flat. And he was like, you know what? I got to be the bad guy.
Got to be the bad guy.
And I'm going to make $1 gazillion.
Yeah. But it's funny, though, because he said
he delivered. And he delivered.
He did. He had that epiphany as a very young man.
He's been around the game for a long time. I mean, you know, his dad, his uncle, his uncles, You know, he's just grown up in it. He's been successful at it since he was a kid. And you know, he was able to take advantage of you know, that time period
Yeah.
and really reinvent himself kind of halfway through his career.
Yeah. Some people are energized by crowd support. And I legitimately believe Floyd Mayweather is energized from a athletic and professional standpoint. I think he's energized by the hate. You know, it to me, I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, there's been some other people in other sports who I could say is the same way. You know, Reggie Miller was that way. Like, boo him if you want and watch and see what happens. You know,
Right.
so it's a unique trait, man. It really is, and we'll find out if Anthony Yard has it. You know, we'll find that out this weekend. So, but there's a couple other fights, or a few other fights. Actually, it's more than a couple. We also have another legitimate world title bout with Juan Francisco Estrada against Dwayne Beeman. That's for Estrada's WBC Junior Bantamweight title that I believe he lifted from Sri Sakat Sorungvasai. And then we have Brandon Figueroa, which is Omar Figueroa's younger brother, taking on Javier Nicolas Chacon. And this is for Figueroa's interim title. Figueroa recently commented, he said, "It's time for me to carry the family name." I, I kind of, I'm not Omar Figueroa, but like I kind of felt that sting a little bit. Like if like, especially if I lost my last fight, like Figueroa lost his last fight and had a huge absence away from the sport the way Figueroa did, and my younger brother said it's time for me to carry the name, I might feel some kind of way about that. Like, I don't know.
I think what he probably meant is, you know, I'm here to now, like, I don't know, carry the mantle, to kind of take the baton, to kind of, you know, come back with a big win. You know, I don't know. Who knows?
I don't know. Yeah,
It's
it just kind of I read it and I was like, okay, and it was a quote, so I was like, I wonder what that's about. But yeah, but you know, he's fighting Javier Nicolas Chacon, and his interim titles on the line. You also have two legitimate title fights that will not be televised. The two that I just mentioned will be televised. Figueroa will be on FS1. Juan Francisco Estrada versus Dwayne Beeman will be on the Zone. Of course, Kovalev Yard is on ESPN. But there's two title fights that are actually not even going to be televised. Kosei Tanaka versus Jonathan Gonzalez. Tanaka's WBO flyweight titles on the line. And then Vic Saludar versus Wilfredo Mendez, which is Saludar's WBO strawweight title, will be on the line. Those fights will not be televised, kind of like the Revolution.
So thank you for the programming note.
Hey,
And you know,
here, man.
I kind of want to
PS for programming.
I want to get into some things that could entertain the people that are tuned into us right now, that maybe they
You don't think that was
hear about.
entertaining?
It was, but it wasn't as entertaining as Mike Tyson being baked and Tyson Fury telling us that he was going to go get some strippers, bring them to the hotel room.
Well, see, don't see, you're giving away the content that's already scheduled to
And what
go
was the
out.
and what was the H word he was referring to?
I don't remember.
Well, they should watch the interview because
Yes, because
he wasn't shy. Little context. Brian and I went to Tyson Ranch on last Friday,
right,
and we met up with Mike Tyson and Tyson Fury together. It's a very small group and a very high pit bull that started going, trying to bite everybody when it got a little when we got amped up playing that game. You know that you know, who could punch harder?
yes,
Right? Mazique did beat me. Okay?
I beat everybody actually.
Right. So,
But I was the only heavyweight there besides Tyson Fury, and yeah, I should have won.
Well, the dog was high.
The dog was high, and for all I know, everybody else was too. So that could have affected their punch power. Because Steve just told you, I don't think the weed is good for fighting.
So what did you want to tell everybody?
You know what? You know what? I got a challenge, Peter.
Okay.
I'm gonna say a joke that I know is funny.
Okay.
And you're gonna laugh.
Okay.
Because so often
Yes.
I tell a joke that I know is so money. I know
Mhm.
it's money.
Right.
And you look at me as if I didn't say anything. So I'm at a point
All right.
where I'm tired of selling my jokes. It's
Okay.
not good for
Well,
it's
well,
not good
here's
for
the
my
truth.
psyche.
Here's the truth. Here's the truth.
Yes,
I didn't even hear your joke. You know why?
because you're
Because
high. You were at Tyson Ranch.
because you're sending me a message.
Okay.
You know I can't read without my glasses.
I did not know that. I just
So
found that
so
out.
now like I'm like, you sent me a message.
Okay.
I don't know if I did something wrong.
No, I was letting you
Just
know
tell
that
everybody because I don't even know what I did wrong and I can't read it.
there's a booger on your nose, right? Not really. See, I just told a joke,
And I
and
laughed.
there it is.
Hey.
Bam!
Well, they should watch.
Challenge
Okay, listen.
accomplished.
Watch the video. If you're
I'm
on the
telling you,
if
you
you're
need
on subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're here, just you can watch the Tyson Fury interview. Brian, Brian had him going.
did I?
You had him going.
I actually
He didn't listen. You didn't get off to a good start.
I don't know
No,
why.
Your first question was why Otto Valin? Like you're
Yeah.
like, and he looked at you.
I don't understand why. See, you know what?
But you saw he got pissed right off the bat.
I did. I did.
The language, the off color, it just
Absolutely. I totally
you got to
agree.
check it out though. He got pissed at you, and and then I'm the one that pointed out he gave you the look away handshake.
You did point that out.
But then he locked right into me.
Yes. So I'm gonna be honest. I don't understand why that was bothersome to him. I don't. But hey, okay, I don't know. But he didn't dig it. But I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to upset him at all. I just asked why Otto Valen.
Right.
He because it's not Valine, which was funny because, and here's the thing, I don't know if Tyson Fury knows how to pronounce it because I got that pronunciation from watching more than one of this guy's fights.
I think his answer was because just watch the video because
the video's coming up. So what we did was we put together a nice little kind of like a summary, a vlog of the entire time at Tyson Ranch, right? So obviously the interview is already separate, so you guys can watch that. But then we got some other stuff. Tyson playing some
billiards,
smoky pool hall games.
Right.
I
was instructing him.
Yes. Peter and Mike Tyson had a long embrace.
Yes.
And
he was actually rubbing Mike and I recreated a photo. We should have popped it up here.
It's in the video. I'm trying to tell you.
Thank you. So Mike and I first met each other in 1995, right when he got out of prison, and he was training and getting ready to fight Peter McNeely.
Did you introduce him to Islam?
I did not. but we met really right after he came out. He was in camp and he was getting ready for that fight in August of 95. And we took a picture in March. And that picture that we took was in Philadelphia in 96, actually, okay. Now that I think about it, when he was getting ready to fight Buster Mathis Jr. It was in his hotel room. Back in the day, no digital cameras, no cell phones, no internet. So there was an actual photographer that Don King had that would just always be present and always like the president of the United States, they have the official White House photographer always taking pictures. So this guy, Jay Lash, you've been flashed by Lash, was just that was his card. Taking pictures. And he just captured a really cool photo of me and Mike. He's like, hey, turn and look here. And like Mike grabs my hand and I'm just like, and Mike's just Mike's 29-year-old, 1996 Mike. And we recreated that photo. And so that was kind of nice. That was fun. And it was a good time. I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, right when we got out of the car though, we got a big whiff like outside.
Yeah, it was real. It was real. Like, and it was so funny because.
Oh no, I believe it now. But I believe the 40,000 a month. I believe
40 grand. Yeah, man, it smelled like 40 grand of weed in there to me. So it's definitely possible. All right. So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Peter's a little old, so he has a bedtime that we have to adhere to. But it's one thing that we still we gotta touch on this. And
Yes.
I want to ask a question to
I'm
people.
not, I'm not rushing anybody out of here. I mean, if there are people still watching us right now, I'm not rushing anybody out
People
of here.
love us, man. Well, they love me.
Any
They
more
tolerate
comments before you
they
ask this one
tolerate you.
last thing?
No, well, let's see. We have a they're actually, you know what? You know
Anybody
when you have a
picking on me
really
this
good
week?
chat, you know when you have a really good chat, um, people they start to talk amongst themselves
Right.
and they
They tune
create
us out.
that's but they're not tuning us out because they're shifting their conversation according to what
It's-
we're talking about. So
right.
they're there, right? They're absolutely there. So here's the thing. Let's try something. We haven't done this before. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you guys, you really can't see this the way I want it. So let's do it different. Let's do it differently. I gotta ask you a question. I gotta ask everybody a question.
We're waiting, Brian.
I'm gonna ask you in a second if you wait. All right. Now, what do you see there? What does
What
everybody see? What do you see, Peter?
I see a slim, trim, fit Andy Ruiz.
So I gotta ask the question. This is clearly not a real picture of
Right.
Andy Ruiz.
Right.
But if it was,
Mm-hmm.
do you think, and I want to ask everybody in the chat this, I want people who are watching after this goes up, who are not watching live. If Andy Ruiz actually looked like this, do you think that he'd be getting more respect from everyone, from the boxing community, from everybody? Do you think that the fact that he doesn't look like this, despite the fact that he already knocked Joshua out, do you think that the fact that he doesn't look like this and looks how he actually looks
Mm-hmm.
is the reason why he kind of still doesn't get the respect of a guy who just knocked out the guy who owns 3/4
You,
of the heavyweight title?
you really think he's not getting the respect?
I still think a lot of people, and I even include myself, right? I still think there's a lot of people who just attribute it to the fluke factor, right? That's what I think. I think there's a lot of people who
The lucky
still,
punch factor?
yeah, like, oh, where Joshua wasn't quite ready and blah, 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 and those types of things. I really think that that's kind of where people are. And I think that it has something to do with the fact that he's got the type of frame that doesn't look like a fighter.
I mean, it works for him. Listen, I've always said Andy Ruiz, you could easily claim that he's an undefeated fighter. I mean, the Joe Parker loss in New Zealand, all right, a split decision or majority decision loss to Joe Parker for that WBO heavyweight title in New Zealand is questionable.
Hmm.
I mean, his only loss is questionable. And we even had Evander Holyfield, right,
Hmm.
tell us clearly prior to the fight that don't underestimate him and that he wouldn't want to fight him if that was an option, he wouldn't want to fight him. So people in boxing, right? Never, no one in boxing has looked at Andrew Ruiz as a non-competitive or potential. I don't know if anyone looked at anyone other than Deontay Wilder as the person that was going to defeat Joshua, right?
Right.
Yes, aesthetically, if we were going to say, well, out of these three guys, who do you think is going to do it? Look, the argument can be made that that just wasn't going to be Joshua's night. The argument can be made that there might have been problems going in and that Jarrell Miller might have been the guy that caught him, right? The argument can be made that we saw this coming in the Povetkin fight,
Hmm.
but Povetkin didn't have the speed and the accuracy and the power that people underestimate that Andrew Ruiz has.
Hmm.
So, aesthetically, he doesn't look like the prototypical heavyweight champion, the chiseled body, right?
Hmm.
The ripped frame, the big, hulking type of lean heavyweight. But no one in boxing, I think, ever would say that Andrew Ruiz couldn't fight. You know what I
No,
mean?
no,
Or that he didn't, or that he wasn't of the level. I mean, like I said, you can argue he's undefeated. I mean, he's
absolutely. I
not,
mean,
but you can argue it.
yeah, I mean, the hand speed is real, and
I'd
if
like to
you,
see a Parker rematch. I think he stops Parker in a
I think
rematch.
he knocks Parker out.
You know, do that. You know what? Instead of New Zealand, do that in New York. Do it at the Staples Center.
Yeah,
Do that
and
one
if
at the
you,
Staples Center, and he stops Joe Parker.
yeah, yeah, I think that you know, I asked that question because I'm kind of catching
And
myself.
sorry for rambling.
Oh, it's rambles are fine.
Anyone agree with me?
Yes, many people do. I asked that question kind of calling myself out on that because I'm like, why is it that I'm like I totally believe that Josh was gonna knock him out in the rematch. I totally believe that, right? Um, I mean, I wouldn't be the most shocked man in the world if Ruiz repeated it and beat him again. But I believe that Josh was going to knock him out. But I'm kind of questioning myself because I know as a fight fan, I'm looking at this guy. This guy has fantastic hand speed. He really has really good footwork. Um, the big like if you were to take him with the exact same skills that he has, I'm not even saying make him faster. I'm not saying make him more tough. I'm not saying make him any of those things. The exact same skill level that he has right now, speed, everything, and you put him in that body that we just showed, I think that nobody would be talking about it was a lucky. Nobody would be saying that. Everybody would literally be saying, "Man, that Andy Ruiz guy, man, uh, Joshua's gonna, yeah, he's gonna maul Joshua." They, if he looked like that, they'd be giving him a chance to beat Wilder, and
Yeah,
almost nobody gives him a chance
understood.
to beat
Yeah,
Wilder.
because it's the aesthetics and it's the perception of what athleticism means
Mhm.
because stereotypically athletes are, you know, well-oiled, lean and mean machines. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's what we when we see our athletes, that's what we see.
Mhm.
But there it wasn't one punch that ended Joshua's night. And Joshua did end the night on his feet.
Mhm.
Okay. You know, it was this. You could see right here.
Yeah,
It was this
he took it.
that ended Joshua's night.
He took it.
Lack of heart,
Yeah, and
you
these and
know?
I mean, and we don't know what else might have been going on.
Well, no, but I know that basically did not want to continue. So
Yeah,
for whatever reason,
yeah,
he didn't want to continue.
yeah.
And he was very gracious and almost happy to be out of there. You
He
know?
seemed a
Not
bit
not
relieved.
seemed relieved.
Mhm.
We've seen this before. Okay, body language. When and we talked about this with Tyson Fury outside of the interview that and you know, I wish we had it on interview, but you know, he agreed that Deontay's body language after their fight was of a fighter that felt he had been beaten.
Oh man, anybody that didn't see that is blind. I mean, he absolutely, when that draw was read, there was such relief, somewhat some surprise in his
Maybe a little,
demeanor.
even a little shame.
Yes, 100%,
So look,
100%.
but there was respect,
Yeah,
and all the respect to Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz. This is a sport. It's a combat sport.
mhm,
Okay. Andy Ruiz did a superb job. You and I spent a lot of time with Manny Robles this past weekend as well.
absolutely.
We spoke to him. We interviewed him. Which are we going to talk about? The one thing that are we going to do it now?
Hmm.
I mean, are we
I
going to
think we
create a
should
video
say.
out
I
of
think we
it?
should. Think we
Should we?
should save that for next
Okay,
week.
so or we say that
We have a juicy conversation for you guys to have, or for you guys around Ruiz
right.
Joshua too. So you're gonna want to tune in for that. The
Well, look
reason why
for the
we
video.
don't,
Look for that video. I mean, I think we should voice that video tomorrow.
yeah, the reason why we don't want to do it now is because it could be a very in-depth conversation, both
Right.
between Peter and I, as well as people who are watching and listening on the chat.
But
So,
it's pretty interesting when it was brought to our attention, it was like, oh, like that
yeah,
makes sense.
makes some sense. And I'll tell you the truth, the context of it even goes beyond some of the things that Steve Farhood brought up today earlier on the show.
Right.
So it should be an
Just
interesting
if you're
thing.
not subscribed, subscribe so that you can see
Absolutely.
when this comes out because I think we're not going to wait till next Wednesday because you know this is a fluid topic, this fight, and I
Mhm.
think that that's something that we kind of have to get out. I think Brian prior to the weekend.
Got it.
So, but look, we going back to that point, you know, we talked with Manny Robles, and you know he's going to prepare Ruiz the same way he prepared him for the first fight, and we both talked about how Ruiz made some mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, he did sit there in the pocket, not moving his head. He was susceptible to eating a big right hand, but
Yeah.
his hand speed made up for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
His
Yeah.
footwork made up for that.
Yeah. And his chin.
And Joshua wasn't himself.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Yeah. I don't think Joshua was himself.
But
Uh,
Ruiz did his job.
he did his job, and it's just
Came to
good on
fight.
him. It is good on him because he did what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Got up off the deck. Even in the round that he stopped Joshua, he took a
Mhm.
mammoth shot, but even before that. So he earned it. Nobody gave him that. He earned
Right.
that
He
fight. He
earned it
earned that victory.
100%. No matter what the circumstances are. Let me tell you something. No one goes into a fight 100%. You're coming off of, most times in these types of world title fights, you're coming off an 8-week camp.
Mhm.
People get sore backs, sore shoulders, you know, sparring. I mean, hands. There's always something.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
weight cut in this case, didn't have to worry about the weight cut. But
Right.
what I'm saying is, guys don't always go in 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really hard in a combat sport to prepare for it, because the very nature in which you prepare is
Put
by
you at risk.
combat.
Yeah.
So, no one's ever 100%. So, look, maybe Joshua was dealing with some things, and maybe they didn't know how to back out of that. But you know what? We got to see the rematch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Arjun Ganapathy, I hope I pronounced that right, says that, there are some Nigerian fanboys of Anthony Joshua who believe that he was drugged in the US and that's why he lost. He says that obviously that calls that delusional, which I would agree. The conspiracy theorists are ridiculous. That's the type of stuff that's great for a Instagram image, with like a big bottle of pills or something sitting next to Anthony Joshua looking all,
Right.
phased out. But it doesn't really, I think, even warrant anything more than that. It's ridiculous. Um, he wasn't, for whatever reason, he wasn't ready to fight. I don't think he was drugged. May have buzzed from a earlier sparring session in his camp, maybe that, but I don't think he was drugged.
Listen, I'm going to tell you how quickly and how easy it is to not be yourself. Javier Centeno, who trains a lot of my fighters,
Yep. I
um,
already know where you're going.
he was doing mitts with one of my fighters, Nika Sekniashuli,
Hmm.
168 pounder from Georgia, the country, big puncher. And Nika clipped him on the jaw. And Javier had a headache for the entire weekend. And he said, finally, at one point, he yawned and he heard a big click, and like the jaw released, and then immediately that headache went away. Getting hit in the head,
Hmm.
you don't know, you don't know how people react. You don't know. I mean, these are heavyweights,
Yeah.
right? And some guys that are big punchers. The point I'm making is, yeah, maybe he was hurt going in.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and maybe there's some truth to Joshua's father confronting Eddie Hearn. We're not going to know.
No,
The
maybe
bottom,
not until the documentary comes out.
I mean, look, you guys sign non-disclosures going into camps like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why you never heard Joey Dueco confirm or deny anything.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
immediate liquidated damages.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, Peter, as always, it was a blast. It was
No
great
more
having.
comments. That's it.
No, I mean, we got, just a normal conversation is what we got, and I appreciate everybody having conversation amongst themselves and so on and so forth. Uh, mm, it
Please,
was.
please check out our videos.
Absolutely. And make sure also, don't just subscribe, make sure that you click the notifications bell, because if you don't do that, you won't know when new videos are released.
And Brian,
So,
I want to tell them this, because if they haven't and they're just tuning in, or they caught this, or they haven't checked the videos lately, Brian sat down with Bob Arum for quite a while,
mhm.
covered a number of topics. He sat down with Jamel Herring, sat down with Tyson Fury, pissed Tyson Fury off.
Yeah, well,
First half of your interview was him going off the rails.
which is good.
Um, who else did you sit down with? We had Manny Robles talking about Saudi Arabia.
Hmm.
We had man, we just had a
A
lot of
ton
good
of people.
stuff.
We had
A ton of
get an
people.
opportunity to interact with quite a few people, and then of course we just
Oh, we had
talked.
Freddie Roach on Fight Night.
Yeah,
Freddie
Freddie
talked
Roach on Fight
about
Night.
Manny, about Mayweather Pacquiao too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's a lot of content there. There's even more coming this week. Just some different takes on, and you guys did kind of respond about the MMA and WWE, and we had some people say the more diversified content, the better. Arjun did say MMA is great, but he's not really feeling the WWE thing, and I understand that. But here's one thing I will say to you, Arjun, and anyone else who may have that concern: when there is a video that is boxing, it will clearly be boxing, and you will know that, so you'll never get click on anything and get tricked. If there's something MMA, you will know it from the beginning, so you'll never click on something and get tricked. And obviously the same thing with WWE. This show, Fight Guys Weekly, right now we're talking boxing. That's what we're talking. So I want to at least throw that out there to make sure that you guys are aware of how we're going. So yeah, like I said, I appreciate you guys chiming in and watching. Obviously, great time talking with you today, Peter,
Always.
and always. And we will be back next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. But also look out for content throughout this week. Peter and I will probably breach that subject that we were just talking about with Josh Ruiz too.
Oh, and Brian,
Yep,
they should keep their eyes open because I have a feeling we're going to have Terrence Crawford on this, or if not before the weekend, definitely next week.
sounds great. Who
Fresh
wouldn't
off
know?
of Joe Rogan. Come on.
Fresh off of Joe Rogan. Weed smoke might still be in his collar because the contacts are high there, I hear. So all right, guys, as always, appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.